Burnout doesn't just come from work we hate, it can also come from the work and passions we care deeply about. In today's episode, I sit down with Daniela, a burnout prevention specialist, social worker, author, and podcaster, to talk about how we actually manage stress instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Daniela shares her own journey through burnout while navigating divorce, raising kids, and building a meaningful career. We explore the real meaning of work life balance, not as symmetry or perfection, but as stability. We talk about boundaries, mental fitness, entrepreneurship versus traditional employment, and why self care isn't a luxury, it's a daily necessity. This conversation is about how we show up for others, how we show up for ourselves, and the small micro shifts that allow us to find joy, energy, and fulfillment in the work we do. Because burnout isn't about doing too much, it's about having nowhere to recover. Let's roll right in. All right, welcome to the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast. Today we've got Daniela Wolfe. She's a burnout prevention specialist, is a licensed master's social worker with over 25 years of experience. She's the mother of two kids, the author of the book Balance Breakthrough, a practical guide for busy professionals to take charge of their work, life, and well-being. She's also the host of the podcast Best D Life with Daniela, helping you find the bliss in your busy. Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me here today.
Now, looking forward to this. So, Daniela, can you define work today? How do you define work?
Goodness, it depends, I think, a little bit on what you feel like you're getting out of it. There can be work that you're passionate about, that you can spend a lot of your time in, that you can dive all in on. There's the work you feel like you have to do. There's the work that we do for other people, work we do for ourselves. It's kind of where you show up at that moment, how you see work to be. Sometimes work can be the most fun you ever had, and other times you can take some fun things and make them feel like work if you approach it the wrong way.
That's cool. So, just walk us through how you got into the work that you're doing today. Burnout is such a great topic to be discussing with work. Walk us through how you got to the work you're doing today.
So, as you said, I've been a social worker for over 25 years. Actually, it'll be 30 years this spring that I've been doing that. So, while I'm clinically trained in all things mindfulness, stress management, coping skills, that type of thing, I also went through my own burnout, unfortunately, probably about 20 years ago. I was working full time. I was also going through a divorce. My kids were super young at that point, about 4 and 6 months old. And I'm a high achiever. So I wanted to prove that I could do it all. I could be it all. I could handle things. I wasn't great at asking for help and found that while I was managing things on the outside and looked like I was crushing it, inside I was constantly feeling like I was stressed, overwhelmed, falling short. I was irritable. I was snapping at my kids and just hit that burnout of like, this is not who I know I can be. This is not who I want my kids remembering as they grow up. So I started practicing what I help everybody else with on myself and started taking some time for some small moments. It wasn't a huge overhaul. I started with a simple gratitude practice. Our grocery store had free childcare at the time. I joined a gym with childcare. And just by making these small micro shifts, I found not only was I showing up better for my kids, for my work, but other people around me were doing better as well, because that's the energy I was bringing with me to those situations. And people were asking what I was doing or sharing their own moments because of that. And I think we're all kind of looking for that validation and permission that it's okay to take time for ourselves.
No, I love that. So, why is it tough? Why does it suck for asking help? Like, I feel like that's a really good
Mhm.
question to, yeah, or to answer.
Yeah. A lot of it's based on limiting beliefs. The method that I use when I work with people, when I train people, it starts with your mindset because the way when you think differently, you feel differently. When you feel differently, you act differently. And a lot of times, the way you choose to think about things, the way we've been taught, the things that have been ingrained in us, as well as, like I said, those limiting beliefs, I call mine the mean girls in my head, that kind of undermine. If I ran into someone in the grocery store, one of those times I didn't have my kids, I felt like I needed to over justify and explain why I didn't have them, or else I'd assume they would think, oh, I'm not being a good mom. I'm not being there for my kids. I was slacking off. We can tell a lot of negative narratives in our head for whatever reason, and we're never as kind to ourselves as we are to other people. And so a lot of that guilt can get in the way of asking for help because of what we, again, assume other people might be thinking, put judgments out there that don't even really exist. And sometimes just feeling like nobody else can do it as good as us either, having that perfectionistic kind of mindset. So there's a lot of different reasons where we can fall into that trap of not asking for help.
I feel like this culture is like pretty competitive, right? American culture. And also, like, there's this fear of missing out. Can you walk us through your thoughts with that and how it relates to kind of burnout and asking for help?
Mhm. Yeah, I think sometimes that hustle mentality that we can be ingrained in, especially now with having computers, our emails, basically we are available for work 24/7, whether you're working for somebody else, working for yourself. And so we kind of self-sabotage ourselves by creating that availability, by not having boundaries in place. Boundaries are one of my favorite B words because they are the best. They are that blessing that gives you the space you need to not only be a great worker, a great employee, and do well, but also the space to be the best you.
So that's excellent, Daniela. So, one of the things we like to talk about on the show is that success is not good luck, it's a matter of good skills. So, I want to build on the skill of creating these boundaries. How can you help the audience create these better boundaries for ourselves?
Mhm. Again, like I said, that first part is rethinking how you think about boundaries. I think they get a bad rap. People think it's always a no, it's a negative. But boundaries, they're so freeing for you and everybody else around you. I always love to use the analogy. Imagine you wanted to go to your favorite coffee shop, but they never had their hours posted on the door. So every time you showed up, you'd get there and the door would be locked and you'd be like, I can't get my coffee today. But as soon as they posted their hours that they're only open, say, Thursdays from 9 to 2, you can make your plan accordingly to show up there when they're open, as well as you're not going to be upset. You're not going to be resentful if you go on a Tuesday because you know that when they're not available. And it's the same thing with our boundaries. When we communicate them, when we share what our boundaries are, we are teaching other people how to respect our space, how to treat us. And, then it's freeing where you don't feel like you have to respond to an email at 8 o'clock at night because maybe you've has an outgoing message like, thanks so much for getting a hold of me. My business hours are from 9 to 5, that type of thing. And so by having these boundaries in place, you're going to be more productive. You're going to show up better for yourself as well as for everybody else because you're not carrying these expectations that don't really exist.
I really love that analogy with the coffee shop. So it makes me think like, again, so we're there's businesses running 24/7. So right, the poor coffee shop is open from 3 to 9 or whatever it is, or 9 to noon or whatever it is, right in the morning.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts with businesses with that running 24/7? How can we be available? Right? It's almost like we're set up to lose and fail almost. What are your thoughts with that?
I think again that communication piece, and a lot of times, like I said, it's not always about saying no. You can say yes to things, but in a way that is going to work for you. If someone maybe does want you to work outside of your hours, to then maybe flex your time and have some flexibility. Yes, that sounds great. I can fit it in this day. It doesn't always have to be an immediate yes. It can be, wait, let me check my calendar and see what works best for me. So you can find ways to say yes to different things but then to still find that balance. And when I talk about balance, it's not about everything being equal. I know a lot of people get really touchy about that. Like, you can't have everything equal. Of course not. That's not realistic. Balance isn't about symmetry, it's about that stability between your work and your life and finding that stability between those two things. Some days you're right, you might be working extra long hours, as well as then other days you might be with your family or doing your free time extra long hours, and finding that stability for you, what feels aligned, what flows, what works best for you, but what still has those boundaries in place because a lot of times too with burnout people always think it comes from the things you don't like, but actually your passions can set you up for burnout more because those are the things you toss your boundaries out the window for, whether it's a relationship, your kids, a job you love. Those are the things you go all in on and you're like, I love doing this, I'm just going to keep doing it more and more and more, but you can have too much of a good thing.
Oh, for sure. So how do we make the work life balance possible? How do we make that
Mhm.
possible?
So when I talk about work-life balance, like I said, it's not about that 50-50. Balance comes from what I see as 4 different areas: your ability to adapt, pivot, have resilience, and then those boundaries. Because life doesn't always go according to plan, but if you are able to adapt and flow with things, if you're able to pivot and see more than one option, a lot of this ties into, again, some of that mindset work of having a growth mindset where you see the ability to do things differently. Just because you can't do something yet doesn't mean it's not possible. When we talk about your time planning and your self care, which are those other two pieces, those things help you build resiliency, help you almost kind of like your physical fitness. You build your mental fitness when you practice these skills consistently. And that's how you start to find more of that work life balance.
So one of the things I find challenging, at least for myself, is like I love to play on, mental fitness, like, physical fitness. When you're doing things physically, like in a gym, okay, I'm lifting 100 pounds, I'm lifting 120 pounds. I know I'm making progress, right? What are the markers that you recommend, that you suggest for people for mental fitness? How do we measure that we're sort of improving?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we're always looking for that outside validation to some of the work we're doing. And especially in this area, it can be hard because outwardly, you're not going to see me doing the reps necessarily. You're not seeing me pump the iron when I'm working on my mindset and changing my thoughts so that, I'm not stuck in those negative limiting beliefs when I'm planning my time. Even when I'm doing my self care, a lot of times self-care gets a bad rap because people see it as a luxury, as a nice to have, but it's a daily necessity, just like eating, sleeping, and brushing your teeth. You wouldn't eat on Sunday and think you're not going to be starving on Tuesday. So just like that physical fitness, being consistent with the repetitions is going to be key. And it's going to help you to be able to handle stress in a way that feels lighter and easier. Just like as you start to lift those heavier weights, 10 pounds might have felt super heavy in the beginning. And now it's like you can twirl it on one finger because it's gotten so much lighter for you. We're always going to have stress. That's a normal part of life. Working through burnout is not about eliminating stress, it's about learning how to manage it in a way where it's not consuming you. I love to use analogies. I have another analogy about the difference between stress and burnout. A lot of times, imagine you're sitting in front of a big roaring fire, this big bonfire, and you put more logs on the fire and the fire gets bigger. Those logs are your stress. But if you know anything about building a campfire, you can't just stack the logs on top of each other. You actually need to create some space between them for air and oxygen to get through. You make those little teepees and that kind of a thing. Just like that, your stress, the things that cause you stress, those activities, because they can be positive: getting married, having kids, buying a house, you know, all positive things, but also high sources of stress. You need to create some space between them. You need to be intentional about how you're placing them in your day. That's where that time planning comes in, so that you're not overwhelming yourself and putting out your fire and your energy through burnout.
I love that analogy, Daniela. Let's explore what we mean when we say we're on fire, I guess. Can you build upon, I guess I'm thinking two things, right? You're on fire, literally help me. You're on fire that you're really, I guess killing it. Can you kind of expand upon that?
Yeah. I mean, the fire doesn't mean you're necessarily on fire, but when you're on fire and you're killing it, a lot of times it's because you figured out how to have that space and breathing room in order to keep your energy at a high level. Self-care, working on these practices, it's not about just being calm and zen. It's about your confidence, it's about your energy, it's about how you show up each day. And so when you do these practices, just like you charge your phone multiple times a day, you filled your car with gas and so it has energy. You're filling yourself up to show up with that energy versus allowing the flames of the fire to consume you and burn yourself out.
So I feel like people today, there's so much going on online and there's a lot of noise. People are trying to shout the loudest. There's a lot of energy, I guess, to the point. I guess my question, my thought is for you to kind of explore here is how big should someone's fire be, I guess? Is bigger better? Is small okay? Just warming my hands? What are your thoughts around, I guess, the size of the flame
Yeah.
here?
All right, we'll keep running with the analogy. I think honestly, it varies by person. Everyone has different expectations, different goals, their own kind of drive. Some people need the big fire, want all that attention, whether you're an extrovert, introvert, where your energy comes from can vary. As I'm personally an introvert. And so for me, having a smaller fire is going to help light me up a little bit more than a bigger one where I feel drained in a lot of large social situations. I love them, but then I need to take some time away. Versus you are an extrovert, you might like more of the loud, big, productions to help keep you charged and energized, where quiet doesn't fill you up as much. So, knowing yourself, a lot of this, like I said, it's a lot of introspective kind of work. There's a lot of reflection, a lot of self assessment to help to gauge what do you need. And different seasons of your life might require different pieces of you as well because you have different roles, different things, expectations of you, and that type of thing. And so, knowing yourself is going to help you know what type of fire you need at that moment. Do you need to have more logs for a little bit more energy? Do you need to scale it back and reserve your resources and your energy for something else later?
So, being an introvert, Daniela, it's really awesome. Congrats on your book. Can you walk us through why you wanted to write that book?
Yeah, because personally, I don't wanna gatekeep any of this, it's kinda like once I found out through my own journey, trial and error, how to really help people in this way, I wanna help as many people as possible. So whether that's through my speaking, coaching, or for someone who's maybe not sure yet or not ready to invest in that in their own way, to invest in yourself still through the book. I put everything in there, all the work I would do with someone one-on-one. It's not necessarily like a read through in a weekend kind of book. It's a guidebook. It's your personal playbook on your own journey to creating this life for yourself.
So, I'm curious by the title, right? So, balance breakthrough. Walk us through how you got to those two words to define this
Mhm.
piece.
Yeah, because it's not just about burnout, even though that's a big piece of it. Like I said, I believe finding that balance, that stability in your life, you are your own rock and foundation. And so finding that balance, and it's kind of a breakthrough because I don't think we're always taught these things in school. We're taught, math and writing papers and maybe balancing a checkbook if you're lucky. But for the most part, how to take care of ourselves and manage all these stressors in your life when you want to think of your future careers and the things you're undertaking and the relationships you're in, how to manage it at all. It's its own breakthrough of like, oh, this is what I maybe needed to learn at some point. These are the things that are going to help me to be successful, not just getting good grades and being really smart and those types of things.
No, love it. So, did that work evolve into the podcast? I guess what came first? Was it the book or the podcast?
It was actually the podcast. I've been doing that for about 6 years. It's been its own little journey, going from a very inconsistent, once every couple of months to now it's a weekly podcast. It's I have a lot of guests, but I've actually been doing a lot more solo episodes because I really want to continue to share this information with everybody and connect in that way. So the podcast came first, and then the book. I just felt, like I said, coaching. I love coaching. I love working with people one on one or doing trainings for businesses and companies and things like that. But to really help the person that's in their own head, a lot of this can be so isolating when we have our own doubts, when we're in that burnout, when we have those limiting beliefs. Vulnerability is hard. And so, this is that first step for someone to kind of take a peek and be like, I think I can do this. I think I want to try something, and it's a safe way for someone who's not ready yet, but between that and then listening to the podcast, I love offering so many different options and free ways to help people as well.
Walk us through where you see, your work taking you. Like, what's the future of balance breakthrough? What's the future of bestie life? Do you feel that you've achieved this best life now and you're trying to pass it on to others? You feel like you're still striving to a better life? I guess walk us through where you're at in your own,
Mhm.
progress.
Yeah, personally, I'm always a work in progress. I hope I never stop learning and growing. Still think the best version of me is out there, and I'm ready to keep working towards her and driving towards that next level version of myself. But I also think I'm not done sharing this message either. Even with the book out there and the podcast, I think there's so many different ways we can be applying this in my own life and other people's lives to help us not wait till, oh, the kids are grown or I'm retired to, start living that life that we always say we want to live, but never quite get around to, or creating, a life almost that we don't always need a vacation from. Vacations are great. I'm still going to take them because I love to travel, but to enjoy every single day as well.
No, I love that. I really hate the word retirement. I don't understand it. I guess why do you think this culture values retirement when we contrast it with our work today?
Um, I mean, personally, I see retirement as the door to my next chapter. So I'll retire from doing one thing, but I don't see retirement as a stop. I see it as a start to something else. And I think we've had different versions of retirement in our lives, but we've called them graduations. Maybe it's just the way we're naming it. You look at, you graduated from college and started working, you retired from school, you stopped doing that. And in some ways, I think we see that then as we stop learning, but I don't think that's the point. I think we graduate onto different levels and different versions of ourselves based on our life experiences, who we are, and who we're going to be.
I love that spin on it. So, one thing I find interesting, it might just be my own bias towards looking at, I guess, people working and people being entrepreneurs. I guess for those, what are your thoughts on people in the workplace? They're burned out. They want to, like, I guess they want to do their own thing. They always want to be the entrepreneur. What are your thoughts with someone in a 9 to 5 versus entrepreneur? What's the right path? Is there a right path? Why are people saying, I want to be an entrepreneur or I hate my job?
I think the grass always looks greener. As someone who's both right now, I'm an employee still and I'm an entrepreneur. I think we have this idea in our head of, oh, entrepreneurs make their own schedule and come and go as they please, and don't have maybe some of the constraints of working for somebody else. And yet you have then the sole responsibility of being the marketing team, the management, the podcast editor, all those kind of things, and you can actually end up working more in your own business than you would for someone else. I think because we enjoy what we're doing, we see that work as different. But like I said, that can still make you prone to burnout if you don't have boundaries around it. Work has implied boundaries, but because we don't feel we have that same say, we might view it from a negative standpoint. But there's kind of pros and cons to both. Some people like having a work job for somebody else because they can shut down at the end of the day, and they're like, it's not my problem anymore, versus a business is always your problem. So, I think it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a paycheck or for passion.
Can you build upon that in terms of like, because we need a paycheck, right? Let's face it, we
Yeah.
got to turn the lights on. We got to pay for this, streaming platform here. Walk us through, how is there possibility to balance passion and making money?
There is definitely. There's a lot of amazing entrepreneurs doing incredibly well. Finding how that works best for you in your life obviously is everyone's individual circumstances. Everyone's got their own unique financial situations. Some people have more people dependent on them than others, which can play a role into how much of a risk you're willing to take at that point. But there's always a way to get there. You just have to be flexible and open to maybe not it always looking one specific way.
Do you think everyone has the potential to be an entrepreneur?
Sure,
Is that
absolutely.
something that people desire? I guess I view it as
I don't think
like
everybody
it's
wants to be that for sure. Not everybody
okay.
has that desire, and that's totally, totally okay. But I think everyone has the possibility.
So one thing that I come across sometimes with people and talking in my own conversations is say that this person doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, but then they still hate their job. How would you like suggest to them to love your job more, like it more? What would you coach them on?
Again, that mindset part and even their gratitude and combining those 2 in a way. When I work with people on mindset, they think it always has to be, again, these massive shifts. Sometimes it's as simple as changing the words from "I have to" "I get to." I have to go to work today versus I get to do something that allows me to travel and do all the other things I like to do. Changing your shoulds to, again, something more positive in some way. And it doesn't have to be like toxic positivity, but to find those things that make you smile, whether it's, your funny coworker that you get to spend some time with, um, you know, decorating your desk in your office in a certain way, doing something that you can still be grateful for, because that gratitude is still going to help you see more positives when you're there. It activates part of your brain, the RAS, the reticular activating system. So you can start to see more positives, even from a job that you don't love. By noticing a couple of things consistently, you're going to build on that.
I love that. So, Daniela, this is the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast. What currently sucks about being an entrepreneur and I guess being the 9 to 5 person with your work today? And then what are you doing to not make it suck?
um, I think sometimes uh, taking having too many roles as an entrepreneur can suck because it's just, I'm a specialist at one thing. I I'll be honest, I don't have an MBA. I didn't go for marketing and sales and all those kind of things. And so having to learn all these different things can be hard because I really love and am passionate about the parts that I'm really good at. And so that's the part that can be hard. From the 9 to 5, I think sometimes, again, just having the time freedom can be hard to not always have that the autonomy to make that choice.
So, I guess what are you doing to not make that suck? Is that your entrepreneur work, I guess, with the 9 to 5 or?
Yeah. Yeah, I do both. I do things so that I can, and I'm so grateful for my 9 to 5 to help support me as I'm growing this entrepreneurial business for sure.
I guess that's where I'm sort of at today too, and I ask this because I guess I'm thinking out loud for me as well, because I'm kind of in both worlds like yourself, working I guess a 9 to 5 in this entrepreneur type work. What's interesting is so Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, this psychologist years ago, the father of flow, he did this thing, a study where he found this thing called the paradox of work, where he found people and workplaces were more, prone to being in these states of flow. Flow can be attributed to happiness and correlated to all these different things. But when they were asked where they'd rather be, it was anywhere but work. Like I find that so interesting. Work provides, like you said, the structure, the opportunities. Why do you think people don't wanna be in their 9 to 5 today?
And I almost wanna ask that question back. Do you think it's they don't wanna be in their 9 to 5 or they don't wanna be in office? Because that's a debate I hear a lot about too. It's not that they don't dislike their jobs, it's some of the requirements, as a lot of people are going back to work. I've heard some people say, "I'm on so many Zoom meetings all the time. Why do I have to drive downtown, pay for parking, go out in bad weather when I can do the exact same job from where I was?" So I know that's not exactly your question, but I think sometimes that could be a piece of it. Again, different expectations, um, you know, that can lead to it. I don't know. I don't know where all of it comes from because we obviously no one forced us into our job. It's not like we were decided for when we were 12 years old, like you're going to be a carpenter, you're going to be a
Right.
salesman, those kind of things. We picked what we do for the most part. And I'm not sure if it's because we evolve over time where the job no longer fits who we are, could be a piece of it. It might have been the perfect job for you when you picked it. And then as you grew and evolved, you're no longer that person that that job fits.
I like that, or retired to your use of the word there, which I like. No, that's great. Daniela, where can, people of the show listening in, check you out, reach out to you? What's a good place for them to land?
Yeah, my website is probably the best place to find me. It's bestdlife.com. You'll have access to my podcast, my book, all my social media, blog posts. You can email me there if you have any questions. However, I can help support you, please reach out. I've got some great free resources on there. One of them is the Reclaim Your Time in 10-minute blocks cheat sheet. It gives you over 20 ideas of how to find 10 minutes for yourself as well as what to do with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniela, for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony.
This episode reminds us that balance isn't about making everything equal, it's about creating stability. Boundaries are what make that possible. They're freeing, not limiting, like knowing when your favorite coffee shop is open so you can actually enjoy it. That example Daniela brought up was amazing. And burnout prevention isn't about eliminating stress, it's about managing your energy and deciding how big of a fire you want to burn in your life. Success is not good luck, it's good skill. So here's the skill for today: create intentional space. Set one clear boundary this week. Take one small act of daily self care. Shift one internal narrative that's harsher on you than it would be on anyone else. Mental fitness is built through consistency, not intensity. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, or somewhere in between, growth never stops, it just transitions. And how you care for yourself determines how well you're going to show up for everything else. Thanks for listening to Work Sucks, but I Like It. Until next time, protect your energy, manage your stress, and keep doing the work that supports your personal growth.
And there's a wind that blows across the plains, and it sings.